Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel again. In this video we are going to discuss about the article 25 of the Indian Constitution that basically talks about the freedom of conscience and freedom of religion. Okay, so and we also know that in our preamble, in the preamble of the Constitution, it is given that India is a secular state. So what does secular state means? It basically means that the state does not establish any official religion. That state will treat all religion equally and allow individuals the freedom to practice, profess and propagate their religion. Basically, the Indian secularism is quite different from the Western secularism, because in Western secularism there is a strict separation between the religion and the state. But in Indian model there is equal respect for all religion, that is Sarv Dharma Sambhav. So equal respect for all religions, and state could intervene for social reforms whenever it is necessary. So as we know that the word secular was added to the preamble through the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act in 1976, where India is described as the sovereign socialist secular democratic republic. Now India's model of secularism, basically India's model of secularism is a positive secularism. Basically it means that state will respect all religions and state can intervene in religious matter for social reforms. State will respect all religions and state can intervene in religious matters for social reforms. Okay, like for example, the abolition of untouchability, the temple entry reforms, the Hindu code will reforms. So Indian secularism basically gives equal respect to all religions, and citizen can adopt or practice or profess any religion. The government or the state can intervene, but for reforms like social reforms. Okay, so now we'll see. So now Article 25 of the Indian Constitution that basically gives the freedom of conscience and freedom of religion. Okay, so Article 25 that is given under the fundamental rights, it is available to whom? To all persons, that is citizens as well as non-citizens as well. Okay, so it basically gives four freedom, that is first one is the freedom of conscience. What does conscience means? The right to believe, right not to believe, or right to follow any faith. Okay, whereas the other freedoms to religion are the freedom to profess. What does profess means? Profess basically means like expressing your religious beliefs. So it is express religious beliefs, that is publicly identifying with the religion or openly declaring your faith. Then the second one is to right to practice religion. Basically means like there must be some customs, some rituals, or some ceremonies. So there is right to practice also been given under Article 25. And the third one is freedom to propagate. That is propagate basically means to spread religious ideas, to preach religion, that is explain your religious beliefs, religious teaching. So this is the most controversial, like preaching religion or spreading religion. Does it includes conversion? So what is conversion allowed under Article 25 of the Indian Constitution? So the answer is yes, it is allowed, but if it is suo motu. Okay, that is voluntary, its own. But the conversion through any sort of forced conversion, or by means of fraud, or any fraudulent conversion, or by means of the coercive measures or coercion. These, if conversion is through the force of fraudulent or coercion, then it is it is illegal, not allowed. So now as we have seen, there are two clauses under Article 25. So we will read these clauses one by one. Okay, so under Article 25 clause 1, so the freedom of religion is not absolute. There are some conditions attached to this right, and those conditions are being those conditions or restrictions are being given under Article 25 clause 1. So what are those restrictions? So let's see. The first one is the public order means like the public peace, social harmony, law and order, or the absence of any sort of disturbance. So state may restrict like the communal riot, hate speech, or religious activities creating disorder, or activities if they are threatening the public safety. So state may restrict these kind of activities. Like for example, state can put some route restrictions processions, like it can ban on weapons during gathering, it can put curfew during communal tensions. So the first restriction is public order, and the second one is what? The morality. What does morality means? What? The constitutional morality, that is the human dignity, equality, justice, decency. Okay, so state can prohibit, like state can prohibit exploitative practices or discriminatory practices, or practices those which are violating the human rights or customs against constitutional values, like for example, like the untouchability, human sacrifice, devdasi system. So basically those practice which violating the dignity, state can prohibit them. Okay, like the religion cannot override the constitutional morality. Okay, then the third restriction is what? The health. What does health means? The basic meaning here is the public safety, disease prevention, or the community well-being. So state can regulate like large religious gathering, or state can regulate like the noise pollution, or if there is any sort of public health emergency, then state can put some restrictions or can regulate those religious gathering. Okay, like restriction during the COVID-19, or some vaccination rules, or some crowd control measures. So basically the religious practices cannot endanger the public health. Okay, so the third restriction is public health. Then the fourth, that is the other provisions of part 3. Okay, so other provision of part 3 means what? Other provision of part 3 means like article 14, that is what? The equality before law. Article 15, that is what? There should be no discrimination on the basis of race, religion, caste, sex, place of birth. Or article 17, that is the abolition of untouchability. Article 19, that is what? The freedom of speech and expression. And article 21, that is right to life and dignity. So article 25 basically cannot be used to violate equality, deny human dignity, or promote discrimination, or infringe rights of others. So the basic principle is that the fundamental right must exist harmoniously. Okay, and so it is available to all persons. Basically means what? All persons means that it can be citizen, non-citizen, foreigners, refugees, religious minorities, religious majorities, and it includes what? The Hindus, the Muslims, the Sikhs, the Christians, the Buddhists, the Jains, Parsis, Jewish, atheists, agnostics, everyone. Like the basic principle here is that religious freedom belongs to every human beings. Okay, and these are equally entitled. What does equally entitled means? It means equally entitled means that there should be no state religion and no preferred religion. Okay, that is what? The equal protection to whom? To minority religion as well as to majority religion, and equal opportunity. So basically state must maintain what? Religious neutrality. Okay, so then the freedom of conscience. What does freedom of conscience basically means? It basically means the inner freedom of mind, like freedom to decide what to believe, whether to believe, which religion to follow, whether to follow any religion or not. Okay, so it includes right to believe, right not to believe, right to change religion, right to reject religion, right to adopt a new faith. And it is a personal aspect, like it should be a voluntary, or it should be a individual's own decision. Like state cannot control humans' thought or belief. Okay, and the right to what? To profess religion. The right to profess basically means to declare openly. Okay, it includes like the bearing religious symbols, declaring your religious faith, like the religious dress, religious identity. So it means that publicly identifying with the religion, like Sikhs wear turban and Kirpan, Muslim wears cap, Christians cross, and Hindus wear what? The religious marks. Okay, so one may publicly express what? His religious faith. It is to declare openly basically means that one may publicly express religious faith. Then comes the what? The freedom to, the right to practice religion. That is, what does practice means? Perform religious act. What? Perform religious acts. Okay, basically it includes the worship, the rituals, the ceremonies, the festivals, the pilgrimage, the religious customs. So, for example, the namaz, the puja, the langar, fasting, pilgrimages. Okay, the last one is what? The right to propagate religion. Okay, what does propagate means? Is that the your religious beliefs. Okay, like spreading religious means what? Like preaching, teaching your religious beliefs or doctrines or religious discussions, missionary activities, or distribution of literatures or persuasion through reasons. Okay, but it does not include what? Any sort of forced conversion, like the forced conversion, fraudulent conversion by threat, or conversion by coercion, or conversion by any sort of undue influence. There was one very famous case, that is the Stanislaw versus the state of MP in 19, where it says that right to propagate is protected, but right to convert another person's against the free will is not protected. Okay, so the freedom of religion includes what? The communication of faith, but not compulsory conversion. So if we sum up the entire clause 1, then it says that what? It says that every person in India has the freedom to believe, to follow, to practice, to express and spread a religion of their choice, but subject to what? Subject to public order, morality, health, and other fundamental rights guaranteed by the Constitution. Okay, so freedom of conscience, freedom to profess, freedom to practice, freedom to propagate, but there are some reasonable restrictions, that are public order, morality, health, and other fundamental rights. Okay, now we will see the Article 25 Clause 2, that says what? That basically said that religious freedoms is guaranteed, but it is not absolute. That is, state can intervene for what? For social reforms, for public interest, for social welfare. Okay, so there are two parts. So part 1 says that what? Saving of existing laws. That basically means that existing law will continue to operate, and Article 25 cannot automatically invalidate every existing law. So the previously enacted laws may continue if they are constitutionally valid. So it basically gives protection to what? Protection to some laws. But in part 2, it gives what? It gives power to state to make law. That is, power of state to make law. So state legislature and parliament can enact new law, can regulate religious institutions, can undertake religious reforms, can control secular aspect of religion. Okay, so it basically gives power to state to make some laws. So under Article 25 Clause 2 subclause, that basically said what? It says that state may regulate and restrict economic, financial, political, and other secular activities associated with religion. So there is what? Under Article 25 Clause 2 subclause A, there is an important between what? Restriction between the religious activities or aspects and the secular activities. So religious activity basically includes what? The faith, the belief, the worship, rituals. So essential religious practices. So these essential religious practices are generally what? These are protected. Okay, these are protected under Article 25. But the secular aspect, that is what? The administration, the property management, okay, the finances, or the appointment of staff and salaries of staffs. So these secular aspects can be regulated. What? These can be regulated by the state through law. And it says what? The state may regulate what? The economic activities includes what? The temple property management, religious land holding, the collection of donation, or the leasing of temple assets, or commercial use of religious properties. Okay, and then the second one is state can regulate what? The financial activities. What are financial activities? Like the temple fund, religious trust account, or auditing of donation, financial transparency. So it is basically to prevent any sort of misappropriation or corruption. And the third one is what? The political activity. That is political mobilization or election related activities or activities affecting the governance. And the fourth one are what? The other secular activities basically means what? Like the appointment of priest or the management community, the employment matter. So these sort of secular activities. So under Article 25 clause 2 subclause A, state can regulate what? The secular activities, okay, like the economic activities, the financial activities, the political activities, or other religious or secular activities, other secular activities. Then there is another clause, that is what? The Article 25 clause 2 subclause B, okay. It basically said that state may make laws for what? For social reforms, social welfare, and what? And throwing open Hindu religious institutions to all class of people, all class and sections of हिंदूस, ओके. बेसिकली तो उनको एंट्री नहीं दी जाती थी, लाइक जो दलित थे उनको एंट्री नहीं थी, टेम्पल एंट्री नहीं थी. ऑब्जेक्टिव हियर इज व्हाट? द टेम्पल एंट्री, इक्वालिटी और द रिलीजियस इंक्लूजन, सोशल इंटीग्रेशन. Okay, so religion cannot become a tool for social oppression. So equality takes what? Equality takes priority over the discriminatory customs. Then there are two explanations have been also given. The explanation one basically talks about what? Basically talks about the bearing and carrying of Kirpan shall be deemed to be included in the profession of the Sikh religion. Okay, basically explanation one is given for the Sikhs. So Kirpan, like जो sword, वो एक sacred religious symbol है for Sikhs. Like there are 5 Ks for Sikhs. That is the Ks, Ganga and Kara and Kacha or Kirpan. Okay, so bearing Kirpan is constitutionally protected, considering it as a part of what? The profession of religion. Okay, and it is basically to protect the Sikh religious identity, and so it basically ensures the constitutional protection to Sikh religions. Okay, then there is the explanation 2, that is been for whom? That is for Article 25 clause 2 subclause B, where it says that the Hindus under Article 25 clause 2 subclause B includes what? It includes Sikhs, Jain and Buddhist. Okay, so the temple entry reforms or the social welfare reforms or the religious institutions access benefit extends to Hindus under Article 25 clause 2 subclause B, where the Hindu includes what? The Hindu includes the Hindus, Sikhs, Jains and Buddhist. Okay, so if we sum up the Article 25 clause 2, basically it reflects what? It reflects the India's reformist secularism. While the faith and essential religious practices are protected, the state may regulate the secular aspect of religion and undertook social reforms to advance equality, dignity and justice. Okay, so I think we have covered the entire Article 25 of the Indian Constitution. Let's go through it once. So that is the freedom of conscience and the freedom of profession, practice and propagation of religion. But what? The subject to what? The public order, morality, health and to the other provision of this part, and all persons are equally entitled to freedom of conscience and right to freely to profess, to practice and propagate religion. Okay, and then the clause 2, that nothing in this article shall affect the operation of any existing law or prevent a state from making any law. Okay, so the part 1, the operation of existing law, and part 2, the prevent the state from making any law for what? For regulating or restricting any economic, financial and political or other secular activities associated with the religious practices, and providing for what? The social welfare or reforms, and throwing open what? The Hindu religious institutions or public character to all classes and sections of what? Through Hindus. Okay, and the explanation 1 is for whom? For Sikh religion. And explanation 2, it says that in subclause B of clause 2, in subclause B of clause 2 means what? This. So here the Hindus means the reference of Hindus basically means Sikh, Jain, Buddhist. Okay, so thank you for watching the video and please do like, share, subscribe it. Bye.